She's just a girl and she's on fire, hotter than a fantasy, lonely like a highway. She's living in a world and it's on fire, filled with catastrophe, but she knows she can fly away. Oh, she got both feet on the ground and she's burning it down. Oh, she got her head in the clouds and she's not backing down. This girl is on fire. This girl is on fire. She's walking on fire. This girl is on fire. Looks like a girl, but she's a flame, so bright she can burn your eyes. Better look the other way. You can try, but you'll never forget her name. She's on top of the world, hottest of the hottest girls. Say, oh, we got our feet on the ground and we're burning it down. Oh, got our head in the clouds and we're not coming down. This girl is on fire. This girl is on fire. She's walking on fire. This girl is on fire. Everybody stares as she goes by, 'cause they can see the flame that's in her eyes. Watch her as she's lighting up the night. Nobody knows that she's a lonely girl, and it's a lonely world. But she gon' let it burn, baby, burn, baby. This girl is on fire. This girl is on fire. She's walking on fire. This girl is on fire. She's just a girl, but she's on fire.
There once was a union maid, she never was afraid of goons and ginks and company finks and the deputy sheriffs who made the raid. She went to the union hall when a meeting it was called, and when the Legion boys come around, she always stood her ground. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. This union maid was wise to the tricks of company spies. She couldn't be fooled by a company stool. She'd always organize the guys. She'd always get her way. When she struck for better pay, she'd show her card to the National Guard, and this is what she'd say. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. You gals who want to be free, just take a tip from me. Get you a man who's a union man and join the ladies' auxiliary. Married life ain't hard when you got a union card. A union man has a happy life when he's got a union wife. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die.
I used to bite my tongue and hold my breath, scared to rock the boat and make a mess. So I said quietly, agreed politely. I guess that I forgot I had a choice. I let you push me past the breaking point. I stood for nothing, so I fell for everything. You held me down, but I got up, already brushing off the dust. You hear my voice, you hear that sound, like thunder gonna shake the ground. You held me down, but I got up. Get ready, 'cause I've had enough. I see it all, I see it now. I got the eye of the tiger, the fighter, dancing through the fire. 'Cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar louder, louder than a lion. 'Cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me Now I'm floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. I earned my stripes. I went from zero to my own hero. You held me down, but I got up, already brushing off the dust. You hear my voice, you hear that sound, like thunder gonna shake the ground. You held me down, but I got up. Get ready, 'cause I've had enough. I see it all, I see it now. I got the eye of the tiger, the fighter, dancing through the
Hang on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Break the Bias, an International Women's Day program brought to you by the Cape Mullany chapter of the Coalition of Labor Union Women, CLUW. I'm Pamela Malone, and I will serve as moderator for tonight's event. We'll start this evening off with a message from New York State Governor Kathy Hochul.
Hi, I'm Governor Kathy Hochul. March is Women's History Month, a time for us not to only celebrate the great progress that has been made, but also honor the legacy of all those who fought tirelessly for equality. I'm so proud to be the first female governor of New York State, but I know I would not be here if not for the brave women who blazed the trails that I have walked. The women's suffrage movement found its voice at Seneca Falls more than 170 years ago. And New York was the first major state to support women's suffrage back in 1917. But the fight for equality was and has been waged continuously every day before and since. And it has been led by remarkable women, many of whom call New York home. Women like Shirley Chisholm and Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, Eleanor Roosevelt and Sojourner Truth. With grit and determination, they fought for women's suffrage, equal pay for equal work, and a seat at the table of power. And today in New York, the torch from those courageous women has been passed to us, and we will make that flame grow even brighter before we pass it on to the next generation. We're fighting to provide more support for women-owned businesses, expand childcare, ensure equal opportunities for all women, and pass an Equal Rights Amendment. In my State of the State speech, I also announced a plan to create a council on gender equity to help advance women's rights and find new solutions for the ever-changing challenges women face every single day. But we're not stopping there. We will improve and expand access to prenatal and postnatal care, make advancements in maternal health, address labor and health care inequalities, get women back to work, and protect women's reproductive rights. I've dedicated my entire life to fighting for women, and I'm proud to say that New York will continue to lead the fight for women's rights. Yes, we've made a lot of progress in this fight, and I'm proof, but we still have much work to do. We've been set back by the pandemic, and it has come down hard on women of all ages, especially for women of color who bear the highest burden. And too many women have been forced to leave the workplace. And with the last 2 years showing us more vividly how the burden of childcare, education, and household maintenance, and even family caregiving falls so unfairly on women. Some economists predict that women now face a generational setback, obliterating decades of long fought for economic gains. And there's still so many systemic inequities that we must confront head on. I promise that my administration will do just that, because I refuse to accept that this will be the fate of women in America. From the right to vote, to the right to be paid equally, to the right to an abortion, to love who we want to love, and to feel safe in our streets and in the workplace, free from discrimination and harassment. No matter who you are or what you've been fighting for, we will be on your side and will not stop fighting until all barriers that have held back the true potential of all women have been shattered. Together, we will write the next great chapter of women's rights here in New York.
Oh, what an inspiring and empowering message from the first woman governor of New York State. I'll turn it over now to the president of our CLUW chapter, Felicia Kuhn.
Hi, thank you, Pamela. Hi, everybody. I want to personally welcome you to this incredible event this morning. We are one of 4 New York State chapters in the National Coalition Labor Union Women, and which includes Buffalo, New York City, Long Island, and ours, the Cape Mullany chapter. The Cape Mullany chapter has currently 13 members and is still growing. 5 international unions, such as Communication Workers of America, Teamsters, Public Employee Federation, Civil Service Employees Association, and New York State United Teachers. Our geographical area is in the Capital District in New York State. I would like to introduce you to union siblings who work countless hours to help bring you this wonderful event this evening. Nima Douglas, IUE CWA 380. Teresa Devine, Christy Kruger, CWA 1118. Bonnie Torsha, Teamsters 294. Sandy Corner Shaffron, NYSUT, and the president of Saratoga County Labor Council. Pamela Malone, United University Professions. Willie Terry, retired CSEA. Danielle Bridger, PEF. Holly Clark, retired PEF. And Adam Pelletier, Troy Area Labor Council President. I would also like to thank our friends from Graduate Student Employees Union at SUNY Albany, CWA 1104, Rachel Rampel and Amy Zimmerman for moderating our chats via Zoom and Facebook. They are currently having a campaign to fight the fees to abolish broad-based fees for graduate students. I would also like to thank the United University Professions and Christy Sammons for hosting our event on Zoom and Facebook, as well as our friends from PEF to support our event with the t-shirts for all who registered. Also, they will be sent out shortly. I would like to end on this amazing quote from Maya Angelou. Each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. Thank you.
Hi, Sandy. You're actually muted. If you want to unmute and if you could repeat that, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a virtual meeting without that, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We could make money on unmuting and muting. So this is an icebreaker. The first one, how many more times do men interrupt women? And I'll give it a pause for the answer. And the answer is almost 3 times more often.
Wow. Thank you. First, Felicia, thank you so much for that warm welcome, and thank you to the committee, and thank you, Sandy, for sharing that really startling information. We're going to move now. We have a welcome from our U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
Hi, I'm Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and I'm delighted to speak at today's International Women's Day celebration. Thank you to the Kate Mullany chapter of the Coalition of Labor Union Women for inviting me to join this conversation and for all the work you've done empowering women's voices, especially in the Capital Region. Today's panel is an opportunity to discuss the challenges women face in the workforce. As the only national organization for union women, CLUW is empowering women to address biases and seek justice in the workplace. Your dedication to fighting to increase access to affordable health care, childcare, education, and equal pay is deeply important. I commend you for promoting fairness, dignity, and equity for women in the workplace and beyond. When women bring their voices to the table, they create positive change in their communities and uplift others who feel discarded and overlooked. Women's voices matter, and we must work hard to ensure we have a seat at the table. I encourage you to keep making your voices heard and send my best wishes for a wonderful event.
Oh, how inspiring. Another empowering message. And thanks so much to the Senator for that heartfelt message to us tonight. Now, I am thrilled to introduce our National CLUW President, Elise Bryant. President Bryant joined CWA TNG Local 32035 in 1998 and served as the bargaining unit chair at the National Labor College for 8 years. In 2012, she was given the Lifetime Achievement Award from the United Association of Labor Educators. And in 2015, she was presented with the Washington Baltimore Newspaper Guild's Front Page Award for community service. She currently is the executive director of the Labor Heritage Foundation and has been the national president of CLUW since 2017. President Bryant, welcome and thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Thank you, Pam. Hey, Felicia. Hey, Nima. Hey, all the officers. Hello, my Kate Mullany CLUW siblings. If you know this song, sing it with me. I am a union woman, just as strong as I can be. I do not like the bosses, and the bosses don't like me. I bring you greetings on behalf of your Coalition of Labor Union Women family from across the country with the power of SNAP. Sisters, siblings, not afraid of power. Founded in 1974, CLUW is the largest organization of union women in this country. The founders said, a woman's place is in her union, and that is still true today. But we also say a woman's place is in the House of Representatives. A woman's place is in the Senate. A woman's place is in the White House, and we're coming for it because, yes, like the theme of this conference, we will break the bias. I know I'm in a room full of snaps, even though we on Zoom, because you are members of the Kate Mullany CLUW chapter, one of the only 7 chapters who submitted a video highlighting your accomplishments in 2021 for the National Convention. And that was inspired by the submission of the first and only chapter activities video that your sister president, Felicia, presented at our first online National Executive Board meeting. The Kate Mullany CLUW. You set the benchmark for chapter videos. And if you're not currently a member of CLUW, then you need to join up tonight. And the best chapter, one of the best chapters, I don't hurt anybody else's feelings. One of the best chapters in CLUW is the Kate Mullany chapter. If you got something nearby to write on, then please take out a pen and piece of paper and write the word labor, okay? But I want you to spell it the British way. L-A-B-O-U-R, labor, L-A-B-O-U-R. Now, under labor, write the word history, H-I-S-T-O-R-Y, history. Now, circle the last 3 letters of labor, the British spelling, and the last 5 letters of history, and you have our story. We study the past not to live in it, but to recall the lessons that we need for today. It's Women's History Month. So let's send greetings to the spirit of all the women on whose shoulders we stand. The governor of New York, our senators and representatives, but write down someone that you know personally. Under our story, write her name and say her name. Because we're the women of the union, and we sure know how to fight. We fight for women's issues and we fight for women's rights. A woman's work is never done from morning until night. Women make the union strong. And in honor of our story tonight, I call on the spirit of Kate Mullany, on whose shoulders we stand. Through sheer determination, hard work, and encouragement, in February of 1864, Kate and her co-worker Esther Keegan organized 300 women into the first female union in the country, the Collar Laundry Union, CLUW. Yes, that's right, C-L-U, CLUW. I love that. I didn't know that until Felicia invited me to speak to you today. And I said to myself, Elise, you might want to do a little research here. And I love learning about our story, and Kate's story is worth retelling. Because when we grew up, those stories weren't told. I look forward to visiting Kate Mullany's home, which is designated as a National Historic Site by Congress on May 3rd of 2004 as a result of efforts by then Senator Hillary Clinton. Imagine what our country would be like if little girls grew up learning about women like Kate Mullany, who did this, organizing a union and calling a strike at the age of 23. Speaking of our story, in the year 2021, we elected our first woman vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris. And yes, I'm still celebrating because we went through 4 years of hell and it ain't over yet. We also made history in 2021 when Liz Schuler became the first woman elected president of the AFL-CIO. They are standing on the shoulders of the ones who went before them, on the shoulders of May Chin, Dolores Huerta, Shirley Chisholm, and Deb Holland. And if you don't know those names, then Google them. But before I close, I want to urge you to run, as we used to say back in the day, run for office, not for coffee. I want to see one of you as president of your international union. And by God willing, I will be there when one of you is elected and sworn in as president of the United States. I stand on the shoulders of those who stepped off the slave ships, kissed the ground, and willed me to be here on the stolen lands of the Piscataway indigenous people here in Maryland. In the name of Kate Mullany, will you stand with me? United, we stand. Divided, we fall. They divide us by our color. They divide us by our tongue. They divide us men and women. They divide us old and young. But they'll tremble at our voices when they hear these verses sung. That the union brought my family up and out of poverty. The union made it possible to get a bachelor's and a master's degree. The union brings us together, black, white, and brown. The union brings us together, native born and immigrant. The union brings us together, LGBTQIA. The union makes us strong. Go in peace, go in love, go in solidarity forever.
Oh my gosh. I need a moment. Thank you so much, Madam President. It is so wonderful to hear from you from this event and for International Women's Day. That was so wonderful and so inspiring. It's just such a joy to have you here today. Thank you so much. We can all do snaps for Elise, yes. Thank you so much. We do have some other special guests with us today, so let's meet them. First, we have New York State Senator Michelle Hinchey, a strong union advocate and champion on energy, environmental protection, and economic development. Senator Hinchey was elected to represent District 46 in 2020, making history as the youngest woman to represent an upstate district in the Democratic Majority Conference. Coming from a proud union family, the senator graduated from the Industrial and Labor Relations School at Cornell University. She serves as the chair of the Committee on Agriculture and is a member of many other important Senate committees. Welcome, Senator.
Hello.
Hello. If you would like to say a few words, you are more than welcome.
Sure. I'm happy, really happy to be here. First and foremost, President Bryant, thank you for that absolutely incredible, your incredible remarks, your incredible rendition of that song. I think that encapsulates so perfectly what we are all here to celebrate. And it's incredibly inspiring women like you who continue to inspire me in my position and know that we can continue to forge the path forward if we all stand and work together, lifting up each other and not fighting as we go. We are only as powerful as women as we are when we work together. And so I'm just incredibly honored to be here, to be a part of this incredibly timely and important discussion. As was said, I have a strong labor I'll say backbone, but a strong labor history in my family. I'm proud to have graduated from the ILR school at Cornell. Both my brothers are operators in 825, and my grandfather unionized a cement plant when they moved up to our community in the 1950s. And so we quite literally, my family quite literally learned politics through kitchen table politics, through union organizing. And it's that strength, it's those learnings that I take with me and carry with me in this job. And so I thank you to all of you for the incredible work that you do, not just with each other, but in the labor union, in the movement, to make sure that everyone across our communities, across New York State, can have access to great, protected, good paying local jobs. So I'm really happy to be part of this forum. I'm really happy to be here with you today and looking forward to the rest of it. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Senator. And we're just absolutely thrilled to have you here. Our next panelist, Mary Sullivan, CSEA President Mary Sullivan has a long history of union leadership, serving first as the president of the Herkimer County Employees Unit. She then served many roles at the regional and statewide level in her union. In 2019, she became the second woman president of CSEA. She is an ASME International Vice President and Vice President of the New York State AFL-CIO. Sullivan is a member of CLUW, as well as the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists and Pride at Work. In addition, she is the recipient of many labor awards, including the American Labor Study Center's Kate Mullany Medal. Welcome, President Sullivan.
Good evening, sisters. It's great to be here. I am honored to be in the company of my sister, Elise Bryant, who I had the great privilege of meeting and having dinner with some time ago when she spoke at our CSEA Women's Conference. It's great to see you, sister. And Senator Hinchey, I have not met yet, but I did know of her dad, Maurice, who was an absolute marvelous advocate for labor when he served. He was an outstanding advocate for working people. And I know that his daughter is following in his footsteps. And I'm very, very pleased to meet you, Senator. Hopefully we will one day when this is all over. I was extremely impressed with the governor's remarks. I am a big fan of the governor. I did endorse her on behalf of CSEA for election, and I'm going to ask all of you, make my public statement this evening, to do the same when the elections roll around. It's about time, it's way past time, that this state was governed by a woman. Women have a different attitude and different way of looking at things. Kathy Hochul came into office and immediately looked at her workforce, which has been, that I think my sisters and brothers in PEF will attest to it, as well as NYSCOBA and NYSUT and all my union brothers and sisters in state service. We've been under a tremendous pressure during this pandemic. She recognized that and she's trying to address the issues. She's also looking at doing something about childcare, which is a terrible, terrible loss, or it's not a loss so much as a need in the state for the working women of New York. I think you all know many of our sisters had to leave their jobs because they had no place to care for their children when schools closed down. And that's not right. That's not fair. We represent a great number of childcare providers who lost their businesses because people took their children home and they didn't need the service. So we're going to have to rebuild that group of workers as well. But I'm very happy to be here with you all tonight. I want to congratulate Felicia and this wonderful chapter of Kate Mullany for their hard work in putting this evening together. Thank you all very much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, President Sullivan, and we are very grateful to have you here. Our next panelist is Jolene DiBrango. Jolene DiBrango was elected Executive Vice President of New York State United Teachers, NYSUT, in 2017. She is a strong advocate for public education and leads the NYSUT Women's Committee, as well as NYSUT's Take a Look at Teaching initiative to address the teacher shortage and diversify the teacher pipeline. She is a longtime middle school teacher and union leader from the Rochester area and was elected to statewide office after serving 3 terms as president of her local. She serves as an American Federation of Teachers Vice President and is a Vice President and Executive Board member of the New York State AFL-CIO. Welcome, Executive Vice President DiBrango.
Thank you, Sister Pamela. I want to acknowledge President Bryant, who I would run through flames for. Every time I hear you speak, you just get my blood really rushing. So thank you as always for inspiring us and kicking it off. I want to thank President Kuhn for her leadership and the Kate Mullany chapter for organizing this very important event. And I can't finish my comments without acknowledging my sisters in my union, Pamela Malone, who also serves on our NYSUT Board of Directors, and Sandy Carner-Shaffron, who also serves on our Board of Directors and have been sisters with me in this fight since I took office. This is an extremely important event. If you don't already know, by 2025, it's predicted that women will be the majority in the labor movement. So the time is now to address bias in our workplaces, to stop it head on, and to get the equity and equality we all deserve as working women. So thank you for allowing me to be here with you this evening, and I look forward to the panel.
Thank you so much, Jolene, and we are absolutely thrilled to have you here as well. Our next panelist, Deb Campbell, is retired from a 32-year career with the New York State Police. After serving as a trooper and sergeant, she was promoted to commissioned officer and transferred to division headquarters. There, she was responsible for the formation of the Office of Human Resources and later held the position of Colonel Employee Relations. Ms. Campbell assisted in the development of the organization New York Women in Law Enforcement, where she served as its first president. She remains an active member of NYWLE, is involved with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and provides implicit bias awareness training for the Fair and Impartial Policing LLC. Welcome, Colonel Campbell.
Well, thank you so much, Pam. Let me say it's my absolute pleasure to be here with this distinguished group of women tonight. And President Bryant, I've never met you, but after hearing you for just a few minutes, I want to meet you. This is a wonderful event, especially in March, Women's History Month, and I'm so happy to be here. And I'm happy that we're talking about bias, a topic that is near and dear to my heart since I've been teaching it. So I hope to be able to share some information to everyone that will help us along our journeys. Finally, how empowering to see such a wonderful group of women. Thank you for what you do, and I look forward to listening to everyone speak tonight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Deb. And we're so glad to have you here and sharing so much expertise that you have. We're so fortunate to have such amazing women here with us tonight, and we'll have time later in the program to hear more from them and to also ask them some questions. We are also grateful that Colleen Williams, District Director of Congressman Paul Tonko's office, is attending our event this evening. Colleen, thank you so much for being here. And would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Pamela. Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of Congressman Tonko. It's an honor to join with tonight's distinguished and inspiring panel and so many friends this evening to celebrate International Women's History Day. Specifically, I'd like to thank Felicia and all of the members of our Kate Mullany chapter of CLUW for extending the invitation to our office and certainly for their continued partnership. Congressman Tonko sincerely regrets that he's unable to participate in tonight's event as he's tending to business in Washington, D.C. But I think it's no secret that he has long supported a federal legislative agenda rooted in equity, dignity, and respect for all women, including the right to organize, the PRO Act, ensuring equal pay for equal work and paid family leave, protection and access to health care, access to childcare, reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, affordable childcare, and much more. He was also extremely proud to introduce a resolution in the House commemorating the life and legacy of Capital Region labor pioneer Kate Mullany, just one of many tenacious Capital Region trailblazing women in the labor movement, but certainly one that we all admire. On behalf of Congressman Tonko, I want to just thank all of our sisters and siblings in labor for continuing to lead the charge on so many important issues that lift us all. Rest assured, you have a partner in Congressman Tonko who will continue to fight in Washington to ensure women's voices are not only heard, but that women's voices are at the table in every important decision and discussion happening at the federal level. Again, thank you so much for the invitation. And on behalf of Congressman Tonko, I want to wish all of you a very happy and healthy Women's History Month. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Colleen. Please give our best to the Congressman. He has certainly long been an advocate, as you said, for women's issues and women's rights. So please give him our best. Christy.
Hello, everyone. Quick question. In a study of performance reviews, what percentage of women received feedback on their personal style, such as, "You can sometimes be abrasive," and what percentage of men received the same type of feedback? I'll give you a minute to think about this one because it's a little sad. The answer is 66% of women and 1% of men.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Christy. And I am sure that is a statistic that is something to which we can all relate. Next, in our program, we have a short video about the namesake of our CLUW chapter, labor activist Kate Mullany. It will just take a minute to get the, we have a lot of things that we're organizing behind the scenes in terms of our Zoom meeting and our Facebook. So we'll have the video in just a moment.
The invention of the detachable collar by a Troy woman in the late 1820s spawned a textile industry that survived into the 20th century. By the 1860s, over 3,700 women launderers, starchers, and ironers were working 14-hour days in dangerous conditions, earning around $3 a week. Irish immigrant Kate Mullany, a 23-year-old laundress, organized 200 women in 1864 to form the country's first all-female labor union. After a strike, their demands were met and they received a 25% raise. She went on to become the first female elected officer in the National Labor Congress long before women received the right to vote. Mullany's accomplishments as an activist and labor leader are still celebrated today. Her house on 8th Street in Troy is a National Historic Landmark and is home to the American Labor Studies Center.
Oh, that was just a short video about Kate Mullany. Did you know that the Kate Mullany house in Troy is home to the American Labor Studies Center? And to learn more, mark your calendar on Wednesday, March 23rd at 6 p.m. There will be a program, Kate Mullany and America's first all-female union. And that's hosted by Paul Cole, who is the executive director of the American Labor Studies Center. And there is the address where you can get some more information about the Kate Mullany house. And I believe that's also in the chat as well. So let's dive into let's dive into bias. So what does it mean, and what biases exist that affect women? We'll first turn to Bonnie.
Hi, everyone. So likability bias is rooted in age-old expectations. We expect men to be assertive, so when they lead, it feels natural. We expect women to be kind and communal, so when they assert themselves, we like them less.
Sandy?
Unmute. Okay, so here we go. Based on deep-rooted and incorrect assumptions about women's and men's abilities, we tend to underestimate women's performance and overestimate men's. Disturbing.
Oh, thanks, Sandy.
Maternal bias. Motherhood triggers false assumptions that women are less committed to their careers, even less confident.
Attribution bias is closely linked to performance bias because we see women as less competent than men and tend to give women less credit for accomplishments and blame them more for mistakes.
Affinity bias. We gravitate toward people like ourselves in appearance, beliefs, and background. We may avoid or even dislike people who are different than us.
Oh, thanks for all of those definitions. And there's one more, intersectionality bias. And so bias is not limited to gender, and women can also experience bias due to their race, sexual orientation, disability, or other aspects of their identity. So now that we've heard some definitions and know a little bit more about the different types of biases, let's take a look at this in action. We have a video we wanted to share with you, and we'll see an example of bias or multiple biases in action.
Hi, what's your name, darling?
My name is Susan Boyle.
Okay, Susan, where are you from?
I am from Blackburn near Bathgate, West Lothian.
It's a big town.
It's a sort of collection of, villages. I had to think there.
And how old are you, Susan?
I am 47. And that's just one side of me.
Okay, what's the dream?
I'm trying to be a professional singer.
And why hasn't it worked out so far, Susan?
I've never been given the chance before, but here's hoping it'll change.
Okay, and who would you like to be as successful as?
Elaine Page.
Elaine Page.
Like
what are you going to sing tonight?
I'm going to sing I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables.
Okay.
Big song.
Yeah? Yes.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by. When purpose my life was living.
You didn't expect that, did you? Did you? No.
I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving. When I was young and unafraid. When dreams are made and used and wasted, there was a ransom to be paid. No song unsung, no wine untasted, but the tigers come with their voice as soft as thunder. As they tear your hopes apart, as they turn your dreams to still I dream you'd come to me. And we could live our lives together. But there are dreams which cannot be, and there are storms we cannot weather. I had a dream like life would be, so different from this hell I'm living, so different now from what it seems. Now life has killed the dream I dreamed.
Wow, I could watch that video 100 times.
Yeah.
And there is a lot to unpack in this video. So let's turn to Deb Campbell, who has expertise in both implicit and explicit bias. So Deb, can you help us understand what we just saw from a bias perspective?
Yes, Pam, I think I can. First of all, I absolutely love that video. We use it in our training program because it really highlights what bias is and how it works. So I will tell you this, I think there's a misperception about what bias is. When people talk about bias, people get very defensive. Are you calling me biased? People get angry because people think of bias and they think of hatred. They think of racism. They think of sexism. They think of anti-Semitism. They think of the negative biases. But the science of modern bias tells us that in addition to the explicit biases, which I've just mentioned, there's another bias called implicit bias. Now, some people have explicit biases, and unfortunately, we see examples of that in the country today, the shooting at the mosques and things like that. That is bad bias. But you know what, folks? Those people own that bias. A good example is the KKK. Explicit bias, hatred towards a group. Individuals with explicit bias, such as members of the KKK, they go into that Walmart proudly and buy those white sheets because that's who they are. And unfortunately, we do have people who have implicit bias, probably within our agencies, but not a lot, a few. But a bias that everyone has is implicit bias. Implicit bias. Implicit bias, I'm going to read you the definition and then talk about it. Unconscious implicit bias are the underlying attitudes and stereotypes that people unconsciously attribute to another person or group of people that affect how they understand and engage with a person or group. We all have implicit biases because we're human beings. This much I know. Everyone on this call has implicit bias, and all of your implicit biases are different because they're based upon what we've experienced. I'm very visual, so I like to think about it as a filing cabinet in the sky with my name on it, Deb Campbell. It has all of my experiences throughout my life. I grew up in a small town in Columbia County, Chatham, New York. Went to high school there. I went to SUNY Cortland to become a phys ed teacher. No jobs. My time with the State Police Academy, my time as a trooper, my time as a mother, my time as an instructor. And those frame what my implicit biases are. And as we go through our life activity, when we come upon something that we don't know what it is, we call it ambiguous, unclear. We look to our filing cabinet to try to help us explain what it is so we understand it. But the problem is sometimes that filing cabinet is wrong. And what we're looking at now is not something we've seen before. And even though implicit biases are not bad, they are not ill-intentioned, but people can make decisions based on those biases that are inaccurate, incorrect, and wrong to make. Now, I'm going to tell you, folks, it's very difficult to control our implicit biases. I have been teaching this for 6 years. So you'd think that I'd be aware of what my implicit biases are and could avoid them. Well, let me share a quick story with you that'll exemplify this point. My husband and I bought a refrigerator recently, and we had trouble with it right away. The water was coming out slow as could be. I couldn't figure out what it was. Luckily, I had a warranty. So I called and they sent a plumber. And I said, finally, we'll get this fixed. So I see the truck come up my driveway and pull around, and I see the door open, and I see this small, petite, 5'4" woman walking out of the truck and coming to my door. And she said, hi, my name is Cindy. Can I help you? Well, what's the first thought that went through my mind? Where's the plumber? I'm thinking of a heavy man, jeans hanging down, the butt crack showing. Where's the plumber? Who's going to fix my problem? This woman walks into the house. I explain the problem, and she says to me, well, do you have a self-piercing saddle valve? What you need to correct the problem is a direct line with a ball shutoff. So what happened to me? I had no animus or hatred towards her, but I made an assumption based on my stereotype of what a plumber should be like. That's implicit bias. It is well-meaning people, but we can get fooled into believing something because of our past experiences. So let's go back to Susan Boyle for a minute. And I'm going to ask the audience, and I know we have 47 of you, to be involved because I think that it's a better discussion this way. So I'm going to ask you some questions and I'd like you to type them into the chat. And I have a couple of our helpers who are going to tell me what you've said. So my first question is this: why were people surprised when Susan Boyle began to sing? What made them think that she would not be a successful singer? Call them out, ladies, when you hear some comments. Just type them right in for us. You're part of this conversation.
Her appearance.
Okay, her appearance. Her appearance. What specifically about her appearance?
Her age.
Her age. How old was she? Do we remember?
47.
47, unemployed. What does that generate in my mind? If she hasn't made it by now, she's probably not very good. Okay. What else about her appearance? What
She was
it?
disheveled.
Okay, disheveled. Some people might say a little frumpy. Her hair was a little bit wild. Yeah, didn't quite fit our stereotype of what a professional singer would be. What else was there? What about the clothes she was wearing? What do you think?
Kind of frumpy, kind of old fashioned.
Frumpy, old fashioned, and she had that sticker right on her chest. There's one more thing that people often pick up on. How about the way she presented herself? Was it a little awkward?
It
Very
was awkward, yeah. It was awkward.
She actually has a form of Asperger's or a form of autism called Asperger's, and it affects how she speaks and how she presents herself. So we saw Susan Boyle, who was ambiguous stimuli. We know nothing about her. And immediately we turned to our filing cabinet or our thumb drive in the sky to figure out what's going on. Well, who are the successful female singers that we think about when we look to our filing cabinet? Give me some names. Who are we?
Whitney Houston,
Reba.
Celine Dion.
Kelly Clarkson.
That's it. Exactly. All those beautiful Carrie Underwood, if you like country music, we're looking for this. These are the successful singers that I've seen. So I looked to my filing cabinet and I looked to Susan Boyle. And you can tell the audience, they're trying to make sense of it, shaking their head. She can't be a singer. She doesn't match what I've seen before. But the truth is, she's got a voice of an angel. Now, let me ask you this. When people see Susan Boyle walk out on stage today to sing, okay, they've dressed her up a lot. She's still not the most attractive woman in the world, but do people know she's got the voice of an angel? Yes, because they've experienced it. They've experienced it. And they now know that she's absolutely a tremendous singer. So that's what human bias is. And we have to be careful. I will tell you a couple things because I think it's important to know. While implicit bias isn't bad per se, it can lead to discriminatory treatment. Okay, and it can. An example of an implicit bias that many people will have is that older folks are not good drivers. So if I'm behind somebody in traffic and they're driving really slow, kind of back and forth, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, why do you still have your license anymore? And then I pull up past them and who do I see? A 25-year-old student texting in the car, losing control of the car, because it's just not what it might appear to be. So I have to be open to that possibility, So what can we do with our implicit biases? There's a couple of strategies that we teach in the class, and I think it's important for us to know them as women, because nobody wants to be making assumptions about people based upon what our implicit biases might be. So the first strategy is the contact theory. This is very effective. Usually implicit biases occur when we're not familiar with a group. One of the things that we've started doing in law enforcement is to send young officers to work in a homeless shelter so that they can alleviate their stereotypes of what the homeless might be like and They get to work with them, they get to know them, and they see them as individuals. And those implicit biases are replaced by fact. It's also beneficial because people have biases about law enforcement officers too, especially after what happened with Derek Chauvin and George Floyd. And I have to tell you, folks, that was explicit bias and hatred. And there's not one police officer I know that supports what happened. And all of us are happy that he's in jail because he belongs in jail. But unfortunately, the public sees that and they make the assumption, well, all police must be heavy-handed. That's not true either. So the opportunities for police to interact with the homeless, with members of the public, can help get rid of those biases we have as well. The second thing you can do, if you don't want to get rid of your biases, and sometimes they're hard to get rid of, what we can do is we can make sure that we're not making decisions based on the biases. We can say, would I be making this decision but for the fact that he or she is blank? He or she has tattoos. Would I not be assuming they're a certain way? If we can do that, we can train ourselves to not make assumptions based on what we see about someone until we know more. And what we try to teach our law enforcement officers is we don't take action based on what somebody looks like, what clothes they're wearing, what's the color of their skin, what's their gender. We make decisions based on what? Their behavior. And that can really help us to control our implicit biases. So thank you for participating in this little discussion, and I hope that's given us all maybe a better understanding of how bias actually works. Pam?
Deb, thank you so much. That was fabulous. And I just felt like I just learned so much. I'm sure everyone feels the same. And, I was thinking of, about the insight into the bias that we face as women, but it's also so incredibly important to think about our own biases. And thank you so much for the strategies on how to try and overcome those. So thank you very much, Deb. That was incredibly helpful.
You're very welcome.
So let's move to some Q&A with our panelists, and we'll get their points of view. And so we'll start with a question for all of our panelists. Can you tell us about a time when you have faced bias in your career, and tell us maybe a little bit about how you responded and how it affected you moving forward, and did it impact, how you mentor others? Let's start with Senator Hinchey. Senator, what are your thoughts?
Great. Thank you very much. Well, and first, I would watch videos of Susan Boyle all day. So thank you for sharing that and for really using that as a highlighted discussion point. I think it's really important. So thank you very much. In preparation for this panel, I've thought a lot about different angles to approach, and I'm excited for the next question too. But for this one, I'll kind of take a step back, and I think a little bit of this part is implicit bias. And I have the privilege of chairing the Agriculture Committee, and I may not be someone who you look at immediately and think, oh, they know agriculture. And I faced that a lot when I became the committee chair just a year ago, a little over a year ago, talking with stakeholders within the industry and others, and it was apparent. They tell this to me personally. At the time, they did not anticipate or expect that just by looking at me, that I would be able to help them at all, that I would understand where they were coming from, that I would care that much about their challenges. And they were really concerned about it because, again, not knowing me at all, but they just, from what they had read and looking at me, they didn't think so. And I'm really happy, that made me work even harder. But I'm happy to say, we got actually the best budget for agriculture the year that I became chair than we've ever had in the Senate. We've been able to build really strong partnerships between people across the state for that industry. And I think it proved to them. You know, you don't always judge a book by its cover, right? You don't know how people are going to step up. You don't know how people are going to work hard to be able to make a difference. And so that impacted me by knowing that I had to, again, work really hard to show that we were on the same team. And it also, as I talk about and mentor other people, other women, but people at large, you know, making sure people don't get discouraged by that. Right. I think it's really easy to be discouraged when someone counts you out immediately. It can shake your confidence. It can make you frustrated. But to know that you just have to kind of prove people wrong, right? You have to go for it. You have to jump right in and show that you actually do know, and then have people have that self-reflection in recognizing, oh, actually, that was my own bias being shown here in understanding. And I think it's a great learning.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Senator. That was, yeah, that is so, you know, really interesting to think about. I heard about some performance bias and some, you know, those are great experience. Thank you. Why don't we turn to Mary Sullivan? Mary, can we hear your perspective?
I'm still teary from listening to Susan Boyle's thing. I found that when I first started running for office, that I had more pushback from my sisters than my brothers at times. There was the illusion that we needed a father figure to take care of the union's business. And I have to tell you that CSEA is probably 70% female. And it was really, really strange. I went one day campaigning when I was running for office, and I walked past a room full of secretarial staff, and everyone turned away from me when I tried to approach them to talk about running for office. And that really, really bothered me. The next day, I went at 6 o'clock in the morning with a box of donuts to a DOT barn, and they welcomed me with open arms because they wanted to talk. They wanted somebody who would listen to them and address their issues. I just found that absolutely fascinating. So I got the reputation, you'll excuse my language, I was known as the bitch. And it was because I demanded stuff of people when they said they were going to do something, or I made sure myself doing what I said I would do. And it became like my label. And I have more than once said it in meetings of people. They call me the bitch. But my sisters all know it's because bitches get things done. And that's kind of been my imprimatur for as long as I've been running. There was a point in time when I wanted to run I was the statewide treasurer of CSEA. I have held almost every office going up the ladder in my union that there is to get. I think the only office I've never held is secretary. But I was running for executive or for international vice president the first time. And my brothers decided that it was not fair that a woman have that spot. So what they did was something called bullet voting. They picked the brother among them and only voted for that guy, which threw the voting out of balance, and I lost that election. But sisters, that's the only election I've ever lost in my entire career. So the next time that position came up, guess who ran and won? Because I made it known among my sisters that that's what had happened, and they all rallied around me, and we won the election. And another time, I was the statewide treasurer, and I decided I was going to run for executive vice president, the number 2 position in CSEA. And a number of people said to me, you can be the treasurer for the rest of your career. You don't have to move up to any position. Treasurer is a woman's job anyway. Well, I became the executive vice president in the next election. The only way I think that you can respond to these things is just pull up your big girl pants and move on and take them on and find a way to get there. I became the president of the Area Labor Federation because we wanted to get rid of the incumbent who was not doing anything for labor in the Capital District. He was just holding the position. And I got there because I worked with my brothers and sisters to do it. Some people, yes, I think Holly just texted or messaged me about, they expected me to be nice. Well, you can't always be nice. If you really believe in what you want to do and you want to move or you want to do something, you have to just do it. You can't let other people's feelings about you taint or get in the way of your goals. It's what I've found. A lot of women, a lot of my sisters get intimidated because someone says, well, you can't do that. Well, you can't do that if you don't try. And if you don't try, you'll never get anywhere. And I think that's more and more the attitude of the younger women. You know, don't stand in our way because we're coming whether you like it or not. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh, President Sullivan, thank you so much for sharing that incredibly empowering story. And I heard, you facing likability bias, attrition bias, or attribution bias, performance bias, affinity bias. It is just amazing, your tenacity and continuing to move forward and pave the way for others. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's turn to Executive Vice President DiBrango. Can you tell us answer the question from your experience?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Pamela. First, I want to acknowledge as a white woman that any bias that I have experienced obviously is not due to my race. And so I want to kind of lift up the fact that there's a certain level of privilege that I walk around in the world. But certainly I have experienced different forms of gender and other intersectional biases in my career. I had been serving in my role as executive vice president for a little over a year. And anyone who's in elected office knows that that first year and several years when you first start off are very tough, and you're working nonstop to prove yourself. And I do believe as women, we work harder to try to outperform or to ensure that we are seen as sometimes worthy of the positions that we're in because of comments that are made to us about how we got to a particular position and how did you get there? I'm interested in your story. And so you work so hard to prove your worth and to give everything that you have to the job. And I had been asked to speak at the AFL-CIO convention by President Mario Salento, and I was really excited about this opportunity, certainly honored and humbled to be only one of 2 women who would actually have a speaking role at the convention. And just moments before I was going to take the stage for the first time, a member of my own union, a very veteran member, very esteemed member of our union, came up to me with 2 young men next to him, and this gentleman was seasoned, and he said to me, where did they keep you? And so I was a little taken aback by the question, and I said, what do you mean, where do they keep me? And he said, well, when I see you, I see a little princess, and I picture you in a little princess tower. And the 2 younger gentlemen with him laughed quite strongly at that gentleman's comment. And it was like a gut punch because I had worked so hard that year and was so excited about this opportunity to be in front of my siblings in labor in New York State. And to have a member of our union say this to me right before I'm going to take the stage was like, so they're not seeing me for the amount of work that I'm putting into this. And my response to him was, they keep me in the office, the executive vice president of your union, 675,000 members strong. And he didn't know quite what to say to that. And the laughing stopped. And I kind of turned, and walked away. But when I mentor people and I talk to women about working in these situations, we've talked about the different types of bias that there is. And I think that we are really up against it when it comes to the way we lead. Mary's example is one way of leadership. And there are women that lead with a different type of leadership, one that is still strong, but can be kind, right? At the same time, you can be powerful and still compassionate. And so the way women lead and the way women look as they are leading is different than men. That competency versus likability, that tightrope that women have to walk, that men don't have to walk, is something that I'm very interested in as a leader. If you're really competent and that becomes threatening, people can start to try to chip away at your competency, or try to, right? But if you're really competent, you just have to keep going. But if you're not likable enough and you're really competent, you could get labeled as aggressive instead of assertive. If you're likable and people really like you, you can be looked at as silly or not serious. But a man would be looked at as somebody who, you might want to have a beer with, or, go out after work with, because they're so fun and, they'll climb up the corporate ladder. But a woman might be looked at differently. So I think women have this tightrope that they have to walk between being competent and strong and assertive and still likable so that they're possibly not labeled. But what I try to tell women as they're entering leadership is to be their full and complete self. I think what happens to us is we start to act differently or try to dim ourselves or change ourselves to contort to whatever this is, whoever this is that is viewing us with this particular bias, to make ourselves, acceptable to them. And I try to tell women to be their full and complete self, likable, competent, all of it, and keep moving forward, as Mary said, because we're not going anywhere. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Executive Vice President DiBrango. That was to be our complete self. What wonderful advice. And thank you so much for sharing that story. It is amazing to hear from our panelists who have done so much and to hear about the challenges that you've faced. How about Deb Campbell, Colonel Campbell, can you share your perspective?
Sure can. Yeah, so law enforcement is a little bit of a different field, a little untraditional for women. The New York State Police started hiring women in 1973. When I came on the job in 1983, there was only probably about 20 to 25 women across the state. So it was kind of an unknown. Now, as a woman in law enforcement, all you want to do is be judged on the work that you do and be accepted for doing your job. And I really pretty much was. I worked at a station down in SP Poughkeepsie. I got along with the other troopers there, worked well together with them. I think I was respected by the supervisors. But I did notice one thing. A year and a half after I graduated and came there, another female came there. So you can imagine how thrilled I was to have another woman working with me after being with all men. Her name was Sue. And we got along very well. We would do different details together, road checks, work investigations together. But one thing I noticed is that the sergeant never scheduled us to work midnights together. Now, as a trooper, you either worked the day shift, 7 to 3, the afternoon shift, 3 to 11, and both of those were by yourself, or the midnight shift, 11 to 7, you were paired up with a partner. So I went to him one day and I said, Sarge, so look at, I looked at the new schedule coming out. Why haven't you ever scheduled Sue and I to work together, midnights? And he looked at me and he said, well, Deb, you gals do a great job, but don't you think it's better to have a man with you at night? And I have to tell you what I wanted to say, you mean like the man who falls asleep in the seat next to me at night? But what I said to him, because I know it was said in the right spirit, he was just being paternalistic, thought he wanted to make sure we'd be okay. You know, and I said to him, well, you know, Sarge, I appreciate your thinking of us, but you know what? We went through the same training that everybody else did. We're all both doing the job you need us to do. I think we'll just be fine. So the next schedule, he put us together on midnights. And from then on, it was fine. He accepted us. He respected us, I think. And yeah, we did great. But that was my little experience with bias, because it was certainly bias impacting his decision, even though he didn't realize it.
Wow, thank you so much, Colonel Campbell. That's an amazing story. And I just thank you to all the panelists for sharing your experiences with us, because it is just so insightful. Our next question is for Senator Hinchey. Senator, can you tell us about your experience being one of the youngest people elected to the New York State Senate? And have you had to confront bias in that regard?
Thank you for the question. You know, I'll start with the positive. It's been really, really great. You know, I think one of the exciting things about one, being newly elected, but two, being one of the youngest people, as well as the youngest person coming from my community to represent anywhere in the legislature, allows me to shake things up a little bit and do things differently and bring a different sense of energy to the work and to the job. And I think that's been really palpable over the last year that we've been in office. And that's been really fun for me and really rewarding. On the other side, absolutely has there been bias, and have I experienced bias in that space? A couple of quick stories on that front. One of my early events I went to, you know, one of the great things I get to do is tour a lot of different businesses, schools, nonprofits. And I went to tour one space, and I was wearing a New York State Senate mask. And my team member and I got there on time, and we came and we met the person who was going to give us the tour. I introduced myself as Michelle, and my name is Michelle Hinchey, the senator. I introduced myself as Michelle, and we were talking for about 5 minutes. And finally, and I'm kind of thinking, you know, when are we going to get this show on the road, right? Like, let's go check out the stuff we're here to see. And after about 5 minutes, the person who was meeting us to give us a tour says, so is the senator coming? And I was like, well, actually, that would be me. I am the senator, and I'm here to see your building. And of course, you know, he was quite embarrassed, but still, you know, and that conversation, I am not kidding, I have had upwards of 10 plus times. There was another one, there was an event in another part of our area that was welcoming me to talk about a new business that they were coming. It was a whole community event. And someone was outside, you know, waiting for us actually to come in. And I walked up again, introduced myself and said, you know, where he said, are you here for the event? I said, yes, I am. We're going in. And similar conversation where I went up and then sat in my seat, and he had no idea that that's who I was. He actually went and apologized to a team member of mine afterwards. He was like, I had this whole conversation with you, very clearly not acknowledging that this was, you know, I was here for an event to meet you and talk with you. You know, I had another experience too, you know, on the age front. You know, I'm 34, and I had a constituent had a art gallery or had a showing at an art gallery, and I went and I was talking to some of the people who were there, and again, same thing, had been introduced numerous times. And someone looked over, one of the main curators there looked over at me and said, so does the senator have children? And again, it was another moment for me to say, well, and I was like, well, no, or first they were talking about having kids. And I said that I didn't, would like to, hopefully have a family in the future. But right now I didn't. And we were having that conversation. Then she turns to me later on and says, so does the senator have kids? And I was like, well, no, because again, I don't have children right now. So, we see that from men and women both times, kind of just anticipating, even though, again, my face is on a lot of posters, right? I've been in the news across our district, our 5 counties. People still, when I get to see me in person, they don't anticipate or expect that I'm going to be or look as young as I am. And it's kind of this constant challenge to have to get over that, whether, the conversation doesn't start right away because they don't expect it to be me, or they think something else entirely. And so it's been really great. Again, we brought a lot of energy. It's been a really exciting time, but it was definitely been a lot of educating on the way over the last year.
I'm just blown away by those stories. And hopefully, as Deb was talking about the file cabinet a little bit earlier, you've changed the contents of a lot of people's file cabinets. But it's, so unfortunate that you have to confront that. But I just love the, bringing the new energy. And I think that's absolutely advice for all of us. Thank you so much, Senator. That was great. Mary Sullivan, can you tell us how you mentor women coming into your union, and how might you empower them? And we'll just, if you could unmute, Mary, thanks.
A number of years ago, I approached the president of CSEA at the time, Danny Donahue, about a leadership program, which we have since created. We have graduated, our 8th class over the last 15 years, because we do a 2-year program. But we ensure that the class that we have is equal in gender, equal in race. Unfortunately, we can't guarantee equal in talent, but we do our best. We do what we can to make sure that our women members, as I said, CSEA is predominantly female. And over the years, that has accomplished a great deal because our board of directors now is predominantly female. The one thing that we haven't cured is the statewide officers and the presidents of our regions. We only have 3 of us of the 10 statewide officers that are female. And that's unfortunate, but I'm working on it. We need to have women mentor other women more than they do. I find it sometimes very discouraging that some of our women don't reach out to other women for, I don't know what the reason is. I can't define it. It can be fear of losing your own position, or I don't know. Maybe they have their own bias against other females, but we do our best to, most of my managers, I've improved the number of managers that are female as well now. We have a lot more female managers than we did 10 years ago. And the last 2 top managers that I hired were both female because they are qualified to have those positions, not because they're female. I think people make a mistake. They think we're not smart enough or not dedicated enough to our work, or the kind of things that the Colonel was talking about. We don't think about it normally, but it's there that we can't do the job because we're not as invested in our work, or we're too much worrying about our children, or we have to wear high heels and we might slip and fall, or some, silly thing that makes us unqualified because we're women. But the reason I was called a bitch was not because I was a bitch, but that was the men's little name for me because I wanted to get things done and I did it. And I worked with other people to get it done. And now I don't have that name anymore. I think they've figured it out that I know what I'm doing. And I think that's what, it's a long road. I've been at this a long time. Unlike the senator who's just getting started and has a long career ahead of her, I'm at the end of mine, or well, not necessarily at the end of it, but I'm close to it. And it's very important to me that we who have been through the fire reach back and reach out. That's the one thing that I've found that a lot of women don't do. You've got to reach back. You've got to, once you get up that ladder, don't kick it out so others can't join you on the pinnacle. Reach back, teach, preach, agitate, motivate, engage other women to being involved, because it's our world too. And we've got to be an equal part, if not more than equal part, of what happens in our world.
Thank you so much, President Sullivan, for sharing that. And that's fantastic advice that I think everyone watching or everyone on this call can certainly take to heart, is to reach back. Jolene, let's ask you, how do you promote leadership positions for women within your union?
Thank you, Pamela. So NYSUT will be celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and we as a union of educators are, again, majority female, with about 70% of our membership being female. In 2014, our first and only so far president of NYSUT, Karen McGee, established a women's committee within our NYSUT structure. And by the time that Karen's term ended, the work of the committee had begun, and I was the only female officer left on the slate. And so that work really became something that I was able to lead. And so we began this NYSUT statewide women's committee, which is wonderful. And it's a very strong, and Pamela and Sandy both serve on it. But it's only a committee of, we can only have a few women. So we have about 80 women currently. And we wanted to expand it, so the work that we did could be kind of distributed across New York State. So the women very quickly came up with the ideas of creating women's committee chapters across New York State. And that would empower not only the women that sat on the statewide committee, but the women that they would then bring into their own circle of sisterhood and support around New York State. And now we currently have over 30 NYSUT women chapters across New York State, which we're very proud of. And as we started to do the work within NYSUT, I would hear things like Jolene's committee, Jolene's committee. Well, it's not Jolene's committee, it's the committee of NYSUT women. And so we really wanted to make it codify it. It's not one person's committee, just the only female officer. It's the committee of the whole, all the women in NYSUT. So I asked two people to chair along with me. So now there are 2 member co-chairs. And we created a steering committee to kind of create pathways, initiatives, and things that we do from every corner of the state and every constituency that we represent, from our school-related professionals to our teachers, to our higher ed professionals, to retirees, healthcare workers. So all of us are represented. And we have the depth and breadth of NYSUT women throughout the committee. And the steering committee is really driving what we do. They also created, these wonderful women, a mentor toolkit that we cobbled together from lots of great work that other people did. So we didn't reinvent the wheel. And that's available on our NYSUT website, a mentoring toolkit. And now we're starting to really drill down to the students themselves. We want young girls to see what they can be. We want them to see their teachers and those in their community, not just in that one role, but also as leaders, as women who are active in their community, as community activists, as volunteers, whatever they do in the community to make it better and to lead. And so we're creating female empowerment clubs now at schools and on campuses across New York State, in the hopes that young girls can see women, not just those teachers, but the teachers can bring in incredible guest speakers for the girls, and they can see what they want to be, and they can be the change in their own school that they want to see in lots of areas, not just gender issues, but LGBTQ issues in schools. And so it's been wonderful to see, and it's been an honor and privilege to work alongside the women of NYSUT to work on these issues. So thanks, Pamela.
Oh, and Jolene, I can say the NYSUT Women's Committee is one of my favorite union experiences, and you have done a phenomenal job as taking Mary's advice of reaching behind and moving the women forward. So so thank you so much, and thank you from me personally, because that's just a wonderful experience. We have a question for Colonel Campbell, but before we go, I ask the question, I just want to say that after we hear from Deb and we have a question for her, we will open it up to see if any of our attendees have any questions. So if you're on our Zoom, you can put your question in the chat. We can get ready if you have a question for our panelists, or if you're on Facebook, you can also post a question there. So Deb, we have a question for you. You have taught women's leadership classes, and during which you've discussed the confidence gap. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Pam, I sure can. Very important part of training. One of the things I do is teach women's leadership for law enforcement, because we clearly need more women in law enforcement positions. You know, women have high levels of emotional intelligence. They bring the skills that we need in law enforcement today. But let me tell you, we are our own worst enemy, ladies, because there is a thing called the confidence gap. That's the disparity between male and female self-assurance. He thinks he can, she thinks she can't. There's been a lot of research done about this, and a couple things I find very, very interesting. So research has shown that men initiate salary discussions 4 times more than women, who are just happy to have the job. Women ask for 30% less. And the thing I find very interesting is that in a survey of corporate job applicants, men will apply for a job when they only meet 60% of the qualifications, while women wait until they meet 100%, and then they still question whether they're qualified. So we've got to do something about that. Now, I'm going to tell you a personal story, because I experienced this and I learned a lot from mistakes I made. I was appointed the first female colonel within the New York State Police. So you can imagine I was nervous. I didn't want to let people down. But what I did is I let it control me. And I was so nervous and unsettled that I couldn't sleep. I was bringing work home. I wanted to know everything on day one, and I didn't. And I had a discussion with my brother, who actually is a recovering alcoholic, 35 years, doing a wonderful job. And he said, Deb, I'm going to tell you something that they tell us in AA, fake it till you make it. And I realized then that nobody knew my doubts but me. So I didn't know anymore the next day, but when I went into the office, I went in with an air of confidence. What? Good morning, ladies. I walked into my office and said, phew, no one knows I'm a phony yet. But the funny thing is, after a few days, I began feeling more confident. I didn't expect myself to know everything right away. And ultimately, I grew into the position. And I like to tell that story because I think as women, we're afraid to fail. And we don't have the confidence in ourselves. We don't know everything right away, but we can learn it and we can move forward. So we have some tips for you all for the confidence gap. So how do we overcome that confidence gap? Mindset. Focus on your strengths and achievements rather than what you don't know or what you don't think you do well, because that will come with time. Dress and grooming, important. People feel more confident when they know that they look sharp and they look professional. Posture, believe it or not, your posture has a strong impact on how you feel. Stand tall, be proud of who you are and what you're doing. Maintain eye contact with others. It makes you seem engaged. It makes you feel more confident, and the interest in others and the confidence will show. Speak up at meetings. Be an active participant. Don't wait for people to call on you. If you have an opinion, offer the opinion. Your opinion is as valuable as anyone else's. Couple more tips here. Lower your bar to good enough. We are far more prone to fall victim to perfectionism than men. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to do our best, but we don't have to be perfect. No one is that I know. I've never met anyone who's perfect. Bonnie Torch is close, but really, I haven't met anyone who's absolutely perfect. So let that perfection be the enemy of good enough. And finally, celebrate and elevate others. And Mary, you really did a great job of talking about the importance of reaching back and helping other women. Unfortunately, there is a queen bee syndrome that many women in leadership positions have. I had to make it myself. They can make their own way. Well, what good is that? We want to see more women in leadership positions because it's so important. It really is. There's a saying among women in law enforcement that part of the problem with law enforcement is that our leaders are pale, male, and stale. And not trying to insult anyone, but it is true. We need to have women. We need to have that emotional intelligence. We need to have that different way of looking at things. And we need to be a part of encouraging others and being there for them. So claim your seat at the table, ladies, because you deserve it.
Wonderful advice. And thank you so much, Colonel Campbell, for sharing that. And that is absolutely good advice for us to take to heart. And thanks to all of our panelists for all of that amazing insight. Let's see if there's any questions for our panelists from our attendees. We have Amy and Rachel from GSEU monitoring the chat, both on Facebook and in Zoom. Amy or Rachel, is there a question for our panelists?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I think the first question would be good for someone in CLUW as a CLUW representative. How Willie says, how important is it that women in their labor unions join a CLUW chapter?
That might be a great question for Felicia to answer, which I bet is going to be a short answer, which is very important. But go ahead, Felicia.
I think it is very important that women get involved in their unions and with CLUW, because sometimes our issues in my organization or my employment is not the same as it would be with, like, say, for trades. So then we can all learn together and be able to help each other grow and encourage each other and to be able to gain that voice.
Oh, thank you, Felicia. And I put the email, I hope everyone is taking a moment to look at the chat, because there's some amazing comments and also some great information. So I did put the email to reach the Kate Mullany chapter of CLUW. Do we have another question for our panelists?
Yes, I do. It looks like Sandy has a question for Jolene. Sandy, would you like to say your question?
Hello, my sister. Yes,
Hello,
I have
sister.
a question for you. I would like you to talk a little bit more about how important our Take a Look at Teaching initiative is and how passionate you are about trying to make it diverse and more women and more people of color to be in front of our children.
Sure. Like Mary was saying, it's so critical that all students can see themselves in their teachers. And so our Take a Look at Teaching initiative within the New York State United Teachers is really trying to work to diversify and strengthen our pipeline. We do believe that you can't be what you can't see. And so we want people who are passionate in front of students. And it's another way that women can lead, as they are predominantly the teachers that we see right now in our schools, and they can start a Grow Your Own program to give students lots of opportunities to take a look at the profession and to continue to really elevate the profession. And by elevating the profession, we're elevating one another. And so we have lots of different ways that we're trying to do that type of work. But just like with the Women's Committee, we have social media groups where we kind of cheer on each other's victories and celebrations and successes and showcase that, you know, and sometimes it's really easy just to use a hashtag on social media to show others that you're proud of something that another sister is doing, and you elevate that. And in our circle of support, our sisterhood circle of support within NYSUT Women, when we achieve something, we share it with one another, and all of us promote that woman so that everyone can see how important that work is and how important it is to us to see another woman leading. Thank you, Sandy, for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jolene.
So we've got a really active chat here in Zoom, not so much on the Facebook feed. So I'm just going to keep moving through our questions. Bonnie, I think you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, so, you know, we've gone through this whole presentation and we've gotten a lot of really cool information, and you're all such strong women. So I love that. That's who I am. So I appreciate strong women. But with that being said, there are so many women that aren't. What advice would you give women? I mean, I've heard women say to me, you know, I was taught to be seen and not heard. You know, I'll ask a woman, why didn't you speak up and say something? And she will just shrug her shoulders at me. So for me, I'm not that person. So for me, it's kind of hard for me to understand it. So I guess what I would like is maybe for women that are listening, like, what advice would you give them? You know, how do they stick up for themselves, or how do they, you know, how do they challenge the bias that is going on, whether it's against them or another coworker in their workplace? Jolene or Michelle?
I'll jump in. I'm sure we all have comments on it. You know, I think twofold. One, if someone comes to you and says, or if you have a conversation with someone who says they've experienced some form of bias and they're not quite sure what to do, you know, of course, directing them to leadership or people within the organization who can help navigate that in the professional mediation manner is important. But one thing that I try to do too, because I think similar to you, Bonnie, I'm not very quiet. I found that I have to kind of pave, as all of us on this call, we've had to pave our own way to get noticed. You got to shake it up, right? And what I try to do when I'm in scenarios with groups specifically is I try to read a lot of body language too for people. I think, you know, you can tell when someone wants to say something but doesn't feel very comfortable to say it, especially in a group conversation. And so I try to make that a safe space for people. If I see someone looking, again, kind of like fiddling or saying that, you know, looking like they may want to, but not knowing, I'll specifically, you know, call them out, not negatively, but as an open saying, oh, are you interested? I do it on Zooms too. You know, I can kind of see if people are looking just to say, oh, or is there anything that you wanted to add or anything that you'd like to say, not to put them on the spot, but to give them that moment so they don't have to kind of raise the hand, but give a space if they want to. And I think it's a lot of what, you know, Mary and the Colonel and so many others have said is, you know, finding different ways to reach out, whether it's back, forward, or sideways, you know, giving people a safe space and a safe environment and the space to be able to do it. Because especially so many of these conversations move really quickly that if you're not really confident in what you're going to say, or you're not really confident in speaking up, you can be moved past. That's happened to me a lot. And I've actually watched other people, you know, I've wanted to speak up on a lot of things growing up. I can think about high school and in college and in my professional career, you know, wanting to say something and then someone else say, and not thinking it was smart enough, or not thinking that it was right. And then someone else says it, usually a man, and everyone's like, great point. And like, what? wanted, that was
So
what I was
true.
gonna say, but I didn't
So
think,
true.
I didn't know if someone would want to hear that. And so, I have kind of learned that myself to be really forward about it, and you take the chance, take the jump, because worst case is, maybe it's not the best comment, but everybody moves on. But to make sure that other people kind of have the space and have the confidence, and to be a partner for them, to do it so they can start to feel confident in it as well.
Is there anyone else that wants to answer?
I think just a side note here, Dr. Stacy TB in the chat says, Senator Hinchey, first, I'm proud to have you represent my district. Second, how soon will I see your name on the ballot for US president? So I thought that was pretty great. Also, at some point, Christy, you had a question for the panel too. So.
Yes. So, quick question. How do you handle when your union officers constantly talk down to you versus how they talk to the men?
We can open that up for any panelist. It is very, how to confront that bias and strategies to confront it in the moment.
That is a wicked
Mary,
question.
go right ahead. Yeah.
It's not one I haven't had, believe me. I think if you have that situation, I think you've got to get the parties in the room and have a conversation face to face. There's no other way to do it. There's no way for somebody to be a go-between and fix the problem. You've got to confront it head on. I found that what you might expect, that I've gotten a lot of negative calls in my lifetime in this business, but I found that sitting down and listening to the other side and finding out what really is their problem. There's sometimes that people come at you with an issue and that's not really their issue. They're masking some other problem that they've got. So getting people in the room together and mediating a conversation, I think, is the best way to address that kind of problem. And if you have a problem with a union officer that's giving you a hard time, I would go over their head to the higher power, if there would, because I've had that experience too, where the lower level officers, you can't deal with it. You have to go over their head and confront them at a higher level. But it's not appropriate. And the next thing I do is make sure I voted them out of office the next time they ran.
Thank you.
Pamela, I would also add.
Go ahead, Jolene.
Using I statements, Christy, where you say, I feel, when you say blah, 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 keep it to how you feel. And I think it's the direct conversation, as Mary was saying, is so crucial. But I think what you wrote in the chat is if they were to call you like babe or honey or something like that, and you could say to the person, what I hear when I hear the word babe and what I feel when I hear the word babe is this. And so keeping the focus on how you feel, and what I'm going to need you to do is this, but be very clear about your boundaries and what's appropriate and what's not, but keeping it to I statements might be helpful as well. Then they don't feel so much on their heels.
Thanks, Jolene. Deb, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I think that pretty much clarified it. I like the advice that I've heard, and really it is not being afraid to speak up when you have to. And, forging ahead to get that solution, whatever it is, because just sitting there isn't going to help anybody.
Oh, thank you. That's great advice from all of our panelists. Amy or Rachel, do we have other? I do have a question, but I want to see if there's any other attendees who have a question for our panel. So my question is, for these 4 amazing panelists, what advice would you give your younger self before you entered into your respective professions? What is there a paragraph or so that you could do to empower that young woman or someone else who we may have in our family, or some nieces or nieces that we might have? What advice would you give to your younger self? I'll
I'll
start
go
with,
first.
yes,
Oh,
go right ahead. No, that's perfect. Go right ahead.
Since I'm unmuted, I would say a couple things. I think, be patient and be kind to yourself. Don't expect to be perfect, but just go out there and do the job every day. Say what you mean and mean what you say. I think it's very important to have consistency. And remember that people are always watching, especially as you get up in leadership position. Your microphone is always on. You always have to be aware of the example that you set and what you're saying to people. Does it match what you believe in? And always don't forget to reach back, because I think what I've learned through teaching leadership, I wish I had known when I was still with the agency, because I've learned things that would help me to be a better leader than I was. And we're always learning, and we can always improve ourselves. And I think that's part of it, is self-improvement.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deb. Great advice for all of us. Would anyone else like to jump in? Another panelist?
I can,
Yes,
I
go
can
ahead,
jump
Senator.
in.
Yes.
And I'll jump in and I'll add it with part of the question I feel is in the chat. I just saw too about running for office, because that's what I was thinking, twofold. One, just do it. Because if you don't, other people will. And I think the part of that too, that's most important, is your experience is enough. I think what I was going to say, and it speaks really well to the comment in the chat, we all think, well, no, I haven't accomplished this yet, or I'm too young, or I haven't held X position, or I'm not an expert in this subject field, or I'm not an expert in all the issues that impact this district, whether, school board to city council to county legislature to state government and beyond. You feel like you need to know everything. You're never going to know it all. Right. But your lived experience and your learned experience is absolutely enough to propel you forward and to give you the tools and the grounding to run for office and to do anything that you want to do, but specifically in the elected office field, whether that's in a union or in a public office, in a kind of a elected statewide office, because your experience is really different than anybody else's. And we need different new voices at all levels. And if we don't make that jump, if we don't just do it, if we don't make that leap or believe in ourselves and believe in, our friends and family members to encourage them to do it, we're going to get more of the same. Right. And so I remember, I was thinking about running a few years ago, and people would say, oh, well, what about this other office, or what about this other thing? And you do that. And then you look around and, for the purpose of this meeting, you look around and those men aren't waiting. They're not thinking about what expertise they may have. They're not thinking about their age. They're just going for it, and they get rewarded for it. Inherently, I think women want to really be the expert and understand it before jumping in, before speaking out. And you can learn that in the job. You can learn that on the fly. We're all really committed to that. And so I think something that I would say is, one, just do it. And two, feel really confident in who you are and what you've experienced in your life, because it's really important to share that with the world.
If I could.
Fantastic. Yes, Mary. Yes, go ahead.
I should tell you a little story. I was working at the Herkimer County Department of Social Services. I had been there maybe a year, and this woman came around and she said, we're having elections. Would you like to run for one? And I'm 22, 23 years old. And I said, yes, I would. I'll run for president. Not ever, 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 ever expecting. And I won. And a month later, I sat across the table from my old guidance counselor to negotiate a contract. And I did it. What I wish I would have known then was a lot more about what I was doing, because I learned very early that when I ran for office, I had literally the working lives of a bunch of people in my hands, and I had to do what was right by them. So I had to learn, and I did. I learned different ways from different people, They call me Landslide Mary for a reason, because I won 3 of my elections by 2 or 3 votes, but I won them. Not because I was so smart, but people had confidence in me because I displayed confidence in myself. My mother always told me, if you're going to do a job or take a job, do it, and do it to the best of your abilities. And I think that's what women have to understand. You are better than you think you are. You have more talent, you have more empathy, you have more just kindness and generosity in you than our brothers sometimes. And you need to put that to work for others, and you have to help others do it for themselves. I'm going to run, or I'm going to vote for Michelle Hinchey for president one day, I hope. At least for governor, perhaps first. But I have every confidence that if we support other women, we will all succeed. And I think that's what we have to start learning. The younger generation is not going to put up with the status quo. They are going to support those who support each other. Kindness, generosity, charity, good government, social justice. And those are the people that are going to lead this country. And those are the people we have to all, as women, mentor, embrace, help, push, and we'll all succeed.
Mary, this is Sandy. I'm up in the corner here. I have to tell you something. You said to lean down, lift up someone off the ladder to follow you. Many, many, many years, and I won't say how many, I phone banked politically in your office, and I wanted to become you someday. And I am now the president of the Saratoga Area Labor Council because of your encouragement back in the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. We have just about 1 more minute left. I just want to pause for a moment and see if any of our panelists had some final thoughts.
Pam, can I just
add one go right ahead, of course.
In the words of Simon Sinek, who's someone I follow and love, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. So just a reminder, our obligation really, being a leader is not just about doing that job. It's about ensuring our people are taken care of and developing, because they're the future.
That's so wonderful. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing their experience, expertise, and support, and wonderful advice. And we do have one more startling statistic that we're going to share with you this evening. Nima?
What percentage of Black women have never had an informal interaction with a senior leader in their company? The answer is 59%. It's a pretty big number.
Pretty big number.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Nima, for sharing that. The statistics that we've seen here tonight, you know, in one way, they're like startling to see and hard to believe, but in another, then when you think about it, it's they're just things that we can all really relate to. I would like to thank our presenters, our panelists for being with us this evening, and to all of you attending. And we have one final question for everyone. What will you do to change bias in your workplace going forward? Please enter your comment in the chat. How will you break the bias?
I will confront bias when I see it.
I will highlight women's achievements.
Mentor young union women.
I'll speak up.
name it, claim it, and stop it. Learn that in our NYSUT NEA training.
I will encourage all women to have a voice.
I will work to mentor other women in my union.
I will reach back.
I will confront bias and search truth.
Hire more women for traditionally male positions.
I will use my voice.
I will establish a women's committee in my chapter.
I will encourage women to follow the duty.
I will learn myself and learn not to judge a book by its cover. Teach women everything is possible.
I will work with my union sisters.
Support my fellow union sisters.
I will teach my daughters to advocate for themselves and others.
I will support more women running for office and continue rebuilding our women's committee.
Remember my unconscious biases.
I will vote.
Everyone, this has been an amazing night. Thank you to our panelists, Senator Hinchey, President Sullivan, Executive Vice President DiBrango, Colonel Campbell. Thanks to Amy and Rachel from GSEU for helping with tonight. Thanks to Christy Salmons and Amy Sheldon for helping us present. Thank you, Colleen Williams, for being here on behalf of Congressman Tonko. Thank you, PEF, for our t-shirts. And thank you so much to the Cape Mullany CLUW Chapter Committee for organizing this event. And a special thank you to those of you who have attended this evening. It's through these types of events that we build awareness and strength, and together we can break the bias. Thank you so much, and good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
This is my fight
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, family. Thank you.
Great job.
My power's turned on. Starting right now, I'll be strong. I'll fight my fights on. And I don't really care if nobody else believes. 'Cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me. A lot of fight left in me. Like a small boat on the ocean, sending big waves into motion. Like how a single word can make a heart
Mostly stayed on the
open.
whole thing.
I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. This is my fight song. Take back my life.